drought. We have a certain series of fasts that we take on. There's a lot of big subject in Masechet Ta'anit. What do you do when there's no rain in Eretz Yisrael? Because this land is not like Egypt, where the Nile overflows every year, whether they have rain or they don't have rain.
We're saying now.
Huh?
We're saying now.
Right. Some people say now. When do you say? Right. But there used to be a very sad thing that all of Am Yisrael would say, and they would fast, and they had a special tefillah. So they. So Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonis, he was the chazan, and he davened, and no rain fell. And then his student Rabbi Akiva went in front of the Amud, and he started saying Avinu Malkeinu. I told you this guy's story. Oh no. He said Avinu Malkeinu, En lanu melech el ata. You're our only God. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefenech. We sinned before you. This is the source of our prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, Rabbi Akiva, from this story. It's pretty cool to have a tefillah now that we have a real story behind it. And rain started pouring down. So everybody looked around at each other and said, wait a minute, what does this mean? Does it mean that Rabbi Akiva was greater than his own Rebbe? Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonis is one of the elders of the generation. So a Bas Kol came out, a voice from heaven came out and said, it's not because this one's greater than this one and this one's greater than this one, but it's that this one, meaning Rabbi Akiva, he's Ma'avi al Midotav. He is, what's the word I'm looking for? He overcomes his negative nature. He overcomes his midot. Right? So what does that mean? That Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonis didn't? Right? So the way that some of the Mefarshim, the Siddur Rosh Hashanah explains this, and the Beis Elokim explains this, that Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, he just had this, he was one of these people that had just a good nature. His nature just flowed well with the mitzvahs and Torah and good midot. It wasn't so hard for him. It was natural for him. Rabbi Akiva had a very, very coarse and difficult nature, and he overcame it, and he worked through it. He worked through all of his struggles until he was, tzaddik ador, right? But for someone who works harder, even though they get to the same place as another person, or even a lower place, but it's all about his hard work. The more that a person has to work hard against their nature, the more they influence this world. So there's different neshamas like that. So our sources do say that women's souls in general are more simple in that sense, that not simple like less quality, but more kind of naturally flow with emunah and with
There's no source saying that a man always reincarnates as a man, and then
there is a source that says that. Right. For those that don't hold that women don't reincarnate, they say that a man is always a man, a woman is always a woman, and that's one of the reasons why. And this is something very important for all of you folks that are planning to have children. We never name a boy after a female or a female after a male. You want it?
I never heard.
You have a boy.
I thought it was, but the thing was that
You named after what, a great aunt or something?
a great aunt that died. But
What was her name?
Lottie.
Lottie.
So
how did that
I was
translate?
made late. The problem was someone said that she went to her mukobel and told the mukobel my name, and he said there's a stira in my name, Shlomo Leib. So I'm named for my great aunt who wasn't Jewish.
Lottie.
She wasn't Jewish. So I immediately changed it to Shlomo Aria, which is Leib, another.
Right.
And within a year I was married.
Wow.
I had just been engaged, and the engagement broke. That's why this woman went to Makubal to check
the name.
It was like,
right.
But I never heard that you don't name a male after a female.
Right. We don't do that because it's very important for us that male is male and female is female on all levels, right? It's something that's we see in the world when that gets confused, where that can lead to, and our generation is seeing it in a way that I don't think there's ever been a generation that's had so much confusion around that subject, and those forces, those energies.
Second name.
Doesn't make a difference. The names is a huge subject. Who we name after, how we name, how many names, do we give the full name, do we change the name? If we change the name, is it really called naming after them? Right? So there's different levels of influences. It's not the worst thing in the world, but we don't do it. L'chatchila, if once it's already been done, Baruch Hashem, Hashem is Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is everywhere, and Hashem was in that naming also. But l'chatchila, we don't do it.
With my son Shushan, Yoshiao, I had twins. I came home from
Yoshiao, is his name?
Yoshiao. That's
Yeshayahu? Yoshiao.
He's the one that was murdered. So they had twins. So I went over to my neighbor, and my neighbor said, "You have Meir David for Rav Kahana, Neta Bracha for Baruch Goldstein. Who are you going to do now for twins?" So jokingly, I said, "You know what happened 2 years ago? The one that was supposedly killed Rabbi." So I said, "I'm not going to say yes or no, but," and so comes the bris, and the guy that gave the name I think he was thinking. Apparently.
What you mean?
I said.
You think that was his kavanah?
He was thinking Yigal and Amir. So I said Yeshua Shmuel. He said Yoshiahu Shmuel. I didn't catch it. My wife said, "Why, you decided to change the name?" I said, "No." Anyway, we asked Rav Lior, and Rav Lior said, "No problem. You don't have to change. You call him whatever." Comes my eldest son's bar mitzvah. My mother also comes with my grandparents' ketubah, who my father's parents, who Yoshia was named for, my grandfather. On the ketubah, didn't say Yeshua.
Said Yoshia. Yeah, get out of here! Wow. There's so many stories like this. Names. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Chassidim, there's some Chassidim, they go to the Rebbe and they say, "Rebbe, these are two names that we're thinking of." Rebbe chooses, and the Rebbe gives the name. But sometimes they just let the Rebbe name their children. But at least people go to the Rebbe and they get a bracha for the name that they're thinking about. But Lubavitcher Rebbe, when people come to him, he said, "I don't want to hear it. Come to me after you give him the name, and I'll give you a bracha." And he said, because you have Ruach HaKodesh. The parents have Ruach HaKodesh when they're giving a name to their child. I don't want to take that away from you. I want you to enjoy it, right? We named my second son. His name is Hillel. We like the name. We like Hillel. Hillel is Hakem. We love Hillel. And then I guess a year after he was born, my in-laws had passed away, and we were clearing out their house, and we found an old document saying that my wife's great-grandfather, his name was Hillel. Nobody knew. So, okay, gentlemen, let's go weiter. With your permission, please open up to chapter 4, Derech HaShem, in Chelik Aleph. Chelik Aleph, the first section of the book, chapter 4. In the gray book, it's on page 60. Right? Is that correct? Yeah, 60. And whoever finds it in the blue book, please let us know. The chapter is B'matzavo Shel Adam. What page is it on?
It's page 30.
30 in the blue books.
30.
Is it blue? Yeah.
Green? Blue? Okay. The title of this chapter is B'matzavo Shel Adam Ba'olam Hazeh. The situation of man's status in this world, V'hadrachim Shelefanav, and the different paths that are before him, B'derech Prat, in specific, he's going to specify. It's interesting, Rabbi Kaplan translates all that as human responsibility. A loose translation, but Rabbi Kaplan's translations are the best in the world. Mamsh gets exactly to the core of the Indian. But the difference between this chapter and the chapter that came before in the last chapter we were talking about this world, the next world, how it works, what the basic idea is, how the soul is supposed to shine to the body, elevating the body. And before the sin of Adam Harishon, it would have been a total purification and elevation of the body, and then we would have entered into a state of reward, right? But after the sin of Adam Harishon, it was decreed that there should be a state of separation, that there has to be a state of separation between the body and the soul, and that's death. And then the body and the soul both go through processes, and then they come back together in the revival, and that's called Tchiyat HaMetim. And then the reward comes in a different kind of reality, and that's called Olam Haba, the world to come, right? So, and that was kind of like a general overview of what it is, and we went through what happens the soul when it goes to the world of souls, and what happens to the body when it decomposes, and what's the purpose of all that, and all that was very gewaldic to learn that. And now in this chapter, he's going to go a little bit more in depth. What are you actually doing in this world, right? Because if you recall in last chapter, it was kind of short. Like in this world, your job is just to use your free will to do good, right? And then in the next world to get the reward. But what does it mean to do good, and how is that experience? That's what they're also going to be talking about. The Tzaddik going to be talking about in this chapter. So in Aleph, the Ramchal starts off. He says, "B'matzavo shel adam ba'olam hazeh." Regarding a person's status, his situation in this world, yibachanu shnei inyanim. There's going to be two things that we're going to learn. Tchunat atzmo shel adam b'chalakav u'b'hakavatam. We're going to learn about the content, the actual what's going on with man in his parts, and the composition of all of his parts together. Ve'amakom asher hu musam bo, and the place where he's placed in this world. Olam hazeh. Where are we in Olam hazeh? We're in the world. In the world. What is the world? What is the world? How does the world work, right? B'chol ma shemitlaveh lo, and everything that is shaykh to those two things. And base, he says, V'chinat adam atzmo, when regarding man himself, hine kvar zachanu ech hu murkav shenitchu bo shnei afachim. We already explained in the previous chapter that man is comprised of two directly opposing forces inside of him. In other words, the soul and the body, right? Now, we both know that they weren't really designed to be oppositional forces, right? They're really designed to work in tandem together, right? And it was only because of the sin of Adam Harishon that physicality became much more coarse and base and difficult and oppositional to spirituality, right? Whereas it was designed to be a good student, so to speak, a good recipient of the light of the soul and spirituality, in order to shine the light of spirituality. After the sin of Adam Rishon, it became very, very what's the word I'm looking for? Extremely distant from that, and close to that is receiving that light. And therefore, we experience them as oppositional forces now. Right? They like I always say, that most of the spiritual practices in the world, not Jewish spiritual practices, they have a tendency to cut themselves off from physicality, right? To deny physicality altogether, right? We talked about the Essenes, which was a Jewish splinter group, which were the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they had very bizarre practices that were, for there was no marriage, because procreation was considered something that was very, very base, right? And therefore they only had 1 or 2 generations of their followers, because there was no follow-up on that. And 2, like one of the things that's known is you weren't allowed to use the bathroom on Shabbos. Shabbos is a holy day. You're not allowed to go to the bathroom. If you went to the bathroom, it was considered like you had failed. You would be castigated. I don't know exactly what the rituals were for a person that actually did go to the bathroom, right? But they weren't allowed to go to use the bathroom. They held it in, which of course we know is it's asur pi'altar. You're not allowed to hold it in. You gotta go, right? But they felt like the sanctity of Shabbos is such that you can't defile it by using the bathroom, right? So we can understand in principle, because it's so hard to combine and to mesh the physicality with the spirituality without being taken over by the physicality, right? That's what we're going to talk about in this piece right now. We see with our eyes She'achomriut rishoni bo. We see that when it comes to man, even though you have these two forces fighting inside of him, spirituality, his soul, and his body, we see that physicality takes the lion's share of a person's consciousness and their experience. V'toldotav chazakot bo me'od, and all the different aspects of physicality in his life are very, very strong in his experience. Because right after a person is born, kimat kulo chomri, he's almost entirely physical. You guys know, according to our tradition, that it's not like, when there's the conception, when a child is conceived and he's 9 months in the mother's womb, and we have sources that say that an angel comes and teaches the child the entire Torah, and he can see an angel holds a candle over his head, and he can see from one end of the world to the next. These are two teachings from our sages that we have in the Gemara, right? So we see that he has a soul already before he's born. There's a certain type of spirituality that he's experiencing in the womb, right? But we also have teachings that say that the entrance of our soul happens in stages. It doesn't happen all at once. Like right. This big question about abortion, for instance, right? In the greater world, is it called murder? Is it not called murder? Is this child a living being, or are they not a living being? If they're totally dependent on their mother, right? Do they have a soul? Do they not have a soul? I don't know in the courthouses of America or the other secular courthouses. I don't know how they determine that, because there's no way to really determine that if you don't have a tradition that's based on prophecy, right? And for us, it's not like because we feel it, we experience it, we have a way to measure it. We just believe it because this is what we have passed down. But the soul comes in various stages. Parts of the soul, aspects of the soul come in various stages. Matter of fact, as we all know, what does a person get at age 13 at their bar mitzvah? The Yetzer Tov. That means for the first 13 years, one of my friends used to say before he had children, and he would come for Shabbos, he saw my kids, he said, Micha, when you look at your kids, do you see them as like walking Yetzer Haras? I said, not exactly. I look at them as angels, but sometimes they look like walking Yetzer Haras. But you don't have to be a kid also to look like that. Even adults can look like that sometimes. So, but the point is that doesn't mean before they don't have any Yetzer Hara. It means the full power of their Yetzer Hara, they only get when their Yetzer Tov, they get when they're bar mitzvah, right? Or bat mitzvah at age 12 for girls. So there's different stages. So, but when a child is born, they're almost entirely physical. Their whole experience is physical. They're just sleeping, babies, for the first couple of months, right? You guys know babies for the first couple of days, they don't even open their eyes. They don't even see the world, right? And when they open their eyes, they can't. What is the kind of the greater knowledge in the world of medicine? What is that in development? Is that they can't really see. Their eyes are blurred for a while, for a couple of months, until they can see. It's a very beautiful moment as a parent when all of a sudden the child sees you and they know they see you and they smile right away, right? Whereas before they could look at you with a blank stare because they're not really sure what they're saying, right? So, and then they sleep, they go to the bathroom, they eat, and that's pretty much their existence for a good couple of months, right? And so you see there and everything when they start to crawl a little bit, when they start to touch things, what do? They put everything in their mouth, right? They want to taste everything. They want to experience everything physically, right? So from the minute we're born, our existence is almost entirely physical. Ve'en hasechel po'el bo ele me'at, and the soul is only functional in it, so to speak, on a minimal level. It's alive, right? But they can't speak. You guys know that the measure of man is our speech, that we have the ability to speak, right? That's what defines us from animals. He can't think in a complicated way, a very, very basic way. Most of the parts of his brain aren't even physically developed yet. It won't happen for years to come. And as he goes and he develops and grows, so then his soul takes on a stronger footing inside of him, his experience. Each person according to each child and their level of their stage of development, each person according to their experience. But no matter what, even if his soul takes on great and strong footing in his life, And even if he grows up in the most spiritual of houses, right, with the most spiritual focused tradition, so, but nevertheless, the physicality never leaves him, and it's always influencing him and always trying to distract him from spirituality, and to not specifically to distract him necessarily from spirituality, but just to get him to focus on physicality, right? What happens if you don't eat for a couple of hours? You said, you know, today I'm going to be just spiritual. I'm not going to focus on physicality. After a couple of hours, what happens? He starts to hear some, you know, frogs croaking in his stomach. He hears some voices, right? He smells the lunch being cooked downstairs in Machom Meir as it wafts through the halls of the base medrash, right? And then he says, you know what? I'm going to ignore that. I'm not eating today. So eventually his whole body starts to feel weak. His head might start to hurt. He starts to feel tired. He has to go to sleep, right? A couple of hours passed, and it's for him not focusing on physicality, right? What if one night of sleep he misses, right? Like it happened to me last night. You know, kids were up all night, right? So what happens? He's a mess. The mess, right? He can't function. His body is constantly pulling him, focus on me, right? And the needs that the body has, right? אלא שאם יגדל בחוכמתו וילמד בה ויתחזק בדרכיה, הנה יתאמץ לכבוש את טיבו. But if he goes and he develops tremendous wisdom, and he learns and he strengthens the way of the soul and the influence of the soul, so then eventually he can overpower that nature, which is always driving him to the physical. V'lo yishalach resen tabutam yado, and he doesn't let go of the reins. Meaning he holds tightly the reins of self-control over his physical desires. Not that he can deny his basic physical needs, but indulgences. V'yitatzem lelechet ba'alichot hasechel, and he strengthens himself to go in the ways of the soul, of spirituality. V'ulam תוכיות העניינים האלה שאנו רואים, הנה הוא שבמציאות החומר ועצמותו נמצא האחילות. Sorry, just before that. So there is a possibility that a person can overpower the physicality in the sense that he makes a major focus on spirituality, and then he can kind of overcome that base nature. Meaning, if an infant literally can't control himself, and he cries and cries and cries until he gets food at that moment. So an adult can, or even an older child can push off, have delayed pleasure, and not just pleasure, but also his needs. Even though I'm hungry right now, I can wait. An adult can fast. Adult can refrain from eating certain foods that he wants. You guys have seen that experiment with the children in the donuts? You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about self-control. I don't know what it's called, but marshmallow, right? Right. So the famous marshmallow experiment. They put a marshmallow in front of a kid, and they say, "This, you sit here. You can eat it if you want, but if you wait 5 minutes or whatever, so you get two marshmallows." And you can watch it on YouTube. It's hysterical. It's the funniest thing you've ever seen. And the kids, like, they're looking at it, they're trying to close their eyes, not look at it. All different kinds of funny reactions, and then and some of them can't hold off 5 minutes, and some of them can, right? So there's a lot of research about, like, that ability to litapik, to hold back, to delay pleasure, right? What that does for a person's development, and what that might signify in their future, right? So, but as an adult, you can do it, and you can get to a place where even though by nature we're much more physical in this world, it's so much more what's the word I'm looking for? Blatant, so much more. The word visceral. Visceral. It's like our experience is physical much more than it's spiritual, right? To the extent that a person can their whole life be spiritually depleted, spiritually malnourished, and they never even notice that that's what's going on, right? But if a person is physically malnourished, nobody can deny that. Nobody can not be conscious and aware of that and in pain of that, So, I think I might have told you guys that Dr. Avram Tversky, Chalav Shalom. He said that I tell you this about spiritual malnourishment. It's a beautiful thing. It's just good that to hear. He said that physical malnourishment. So we know certain signs. There's certain biomarkers of malnourishment. If you're missing vitamin C, so then if at a certain point you'll start to experience such and such symptoms. If it's vitamin D, such etc. Right? But what about spiritual malnourishment? So he said the symptom of spiritual malnourishment is a chronic sense of discontent. He's constantly, he's just never, something's bothering him. He doesn't have a sense of happiness, of sipuk nefesh, right? Of satisfaction, right? So a person can work hard and sensitize himself to the spirituality to the point where that becomes the major player in his life between the body and the soul. But it takes a lot of work. Now he's going to talk to us about the quality of physicality in this world. If we look closely into these things we see in this world, reality is such that we find that in physicality, and I'm just going to say in parentheses here that the Ramchal, when he says in physicality, he means physicality for physicality's sake. Strict physicality divorced from spirituality. He says physicality itself it's dark in its nature. It's filthy. It's low. It's base. It's coarse, right? And it's a force that's very, very far and even opposite and oppositional to the real purpose of why we're in this world, which is to come close to Hashem Yisbarach. Physicality, in its nature, as it is right now in the world, because of the sin of Adam Rishon, not as it was originally created, but as it is now, is distant from spirituality and blocks us from spirituality. If it's used only for itself, for its own sake, right? If it is used for spirituality, so it doesn't block us at all. That's really the purpose of physicality, right? You guys, it's a very important distinction, and it's such an important distinction because the reason why so many people who are seeking spirituality cut themselves off from physicality is because they haven't found a way to combine those two in a symbiotic way that they work together for spiritual purposes, right? Which is their ultimate goal. So they say, okay, you know what? Physicality, it's too much of a distraction. It's too much of a deterrent. I'm going to get rid of it as much as I can, right? But ultimately, the goal is to use the spirituality should shine to the physicality, and we should use the physicality that within Hashem. Within the physicality, we show that, because what is physicality? What is it comprised of? Of godliness. In the end of the day, it's just a more distant level of godliness than spirituality, right? There's a teaching. Shalom Uvracha. There's a teaching from the Piasetz and the Rabbi that he says a tradition about the revelation of the Baal Shem Tov. He said that throughout the generations, all the different tzaddikim revealed Hashem's light in a lower level, bringing down that they showed that even in this world, right? So in Kabbalistic terms, the way that they talk about this world is that this world is comprised of vessels and light, right? The world is like a vessel, and it contains the spiritual light, right? So the Piasetz said that the Baal Shem Tov shined the light in such a way that he showed that it's not just that everything within the vessel, meaning everything within creation, has godliness, but in the walls of the vessel itself, he revealed that there's godliness. Meaning, in the very basic essence of physicality is also godliness. But until we get there, until we see that, until we experience that, and we live like that, that's not our experience, right? Most of the world is using physicality and experiences physicality as a way that's directly oppositional to spirituality. And that's what the Ramchal is saying here. Now, neshama atzma, afa pisha ba'atzma, hi zakah ve'elyona. And the soul, even though within itself, meaning to itself, without the body, is absolutely pure and exalted, hine b'hid kansa b'guf hachomli v'istabcha bo But once it goes into the body and becomes one with the body while we're in this world, becomes that extremely limited and pushed away from its natural hativi, its natural inclination, elinyan of kilo, towards something that's opposite it, to such a degree that it's almost like imprisoned in the body, and whatever the body's inclinations are towards physicality, it draws the soul towards that. And like I said, it's imprisoned there with a restraining force. Lo tuchal litzet mimenu ela im ken titametz b'koach hazak min hakoach hamachicha. And it can only be freed from those shackles if it uses great strength, right?
There is the point that sometimes even the body is weak. Sometimes it's because of this, of the soul. There are times when a person feels, I don't know where I got all the strength. This is so.
Right.
It is strength beyond the body.
Right.
So you don't know where your strength is coming from your soul.
Right, absolutely. Right. The truth is, the reality is that our souls are infinitely more powerful than our bodies.
Sure.
But if that's true, why is it so hard to overcome, so to speak, the body and live a soulful life, a spiritual life? We're so, like we said, like Ramchal said, the physicality is so much more, how do you say, bolet, mudgash, stands out. It's so apparent. It's so much more the experience than the spirituality. You don't have to work to be physical. You have to work to be spiritual. If the soul is so much more powerful than the body, and a lot of people argue against spirit, the basic philosophy that there is such a thing called spirituality. They argue, they say, why do you have to work so hard? If you have to work so hard for it to make yourself believe it, so it's not really true, right? And it's a good kasha. It's a good kasha. The answer that we have with our tradition is because since the sin of Adam Rishon, physicality became so much more coarse and so much louder, right? That's the experience, and that's the work that we have in this world, right? And since the Master of the world decreed sheharkava zo shel gufa adam v'nishmato lo tipared leolam, and since he decreed that the body and the soul will always be together, these two always have to work, gentlemen. There's no way out of it. So if a person says, I'm going to go meditate on top of the mountain and just eat rice for the rest of my life, right? And then I'm going to reach spiritual states that that'll redeem me. It's not going to redeem him, because until the body and the soul are working together for the spiritual purposes, he still isn't there, right? It's always going to be the body and the soul together. Perush ki perud amav ta'eno ela devar lafi sha'a ad chiyat hametim. And the whole thing about death and revival, that's only a very temporary thing that happens, right? In order, like we learned in the last chapter, because it has to serve a function for both of them to be able to enter into the world to come in a different state. But afterwards, the soul has to come back to the body, and to the same body, Those, right? It's going to be in a different form, but it's the same body. That's why you guys know HaShem Yerachem Al Yisrael, but there's an organization called Zaka. And Zaka, whenever there's a terrorist attack, Khalila or something like that, they go and they collect all the tiniest parts of the body, piece of skin, a piece of something that has been dismembered. They collect it because it's very important that it should be all together, because that body, every cell of that body is a temple for the soul. It's a dwelling place for the soul, and they have to come back together, right? And it's much better that the person should be buried with all of his parts. The body and the soul, therefore, will continue for eternity to be together after they're reborn. So therefore, there's no way out of it. We have to work very hard to increase our soulfulness and the experience of our soul and spirituality in our life. We have to develop spirituality and perfect spirituality in our lives, right?
About those people who donated organs?
Yeah, it's a big question. I don't know. It's such a new thing that I don't think we have anything written about it in Kabbalistic terms. we have written about it in halachic terms, but on Kabbalistic level, I'm sure there's people that have spoken about it, and Kabbalists that have spoken about it. I don't know if we have an authority today that which doesn't. But if it's halacha is fine, doesn't need the Kabbalah to come along with it, right? But what does it mean? I don't know. Good question. So, but we don't have a choice, gentlemen. Like you can say, you know what? It's too hard. It's too hard. I've got too many lusts. I've got too many desires. I'm gonna live a physical life. Like if Hashem wouldn't get. If Hashem knows how hard my challenge is, and I'm not gonna put up the fight anymore because I can't do it anymore. So you can do that, but eventually he's gonna have to come back. There's no simple way out. Your body, your very body, and your very soul are partnered together, and the body has to become the recipient and the student of the soul, and that they work together, right? And so, even though we don't experience the purification that we go through in our lives as we do mitzvahs and we grow and we work on ourselves, right? But we believe that that's happening in the future, like we'll see soon. That it's a delayed response. But it's the only way it's the only way. But that's the purpose why we're here, right? So that's what he's saying. We have to strengthen the soul. And that she should go and she should weaken the power of the darkness of physicality. What does that mean? Physicality is also godliness, but if it's used just for physicality, there's nothing worse than it. There's nothing worse than physicality just for physicality's sake. That's the lowest part of creation.
You need your arm to put the tefillin.
For sure, no. It's all godly. It's all godly light and physicality. But if he uses it just for physicality, not to connect to Hashem, his whole purpose, we're going to see. I don't think we're going to get there today. We're going to see probably in the next year that the whole foundation of everything that we're doing is constant movement towards God, turning towards God. Right? When I eat, what am I doing? I know that I have a physical need to eat. I know that my body is saying that I need to eat. When I sleep, I know I have to sleep. Right? But do I do it just? What's my focus? What's my intention? What's the way that I do it? This is where the mitzvahs and halacha come in. Right? A Jew who's living a halachic life, he lives just as physical an existence as someone who's totally physical, doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in the soul. Right? They're both living in the physical world. They're both eating, they're both sleeping, etc., and all the physical things. How do you do it? Right? That's what we're going to talk about going forward. But the way you do it, when you do it in a way that you're turning towards God, when you're thinking about God, you're trying to bring the spirituality in. You're trying to, how do you say lahadgish?
Used to feel.
No, lahadgish. Dagesh, to stress, to put the focus on spirituality. Yes, I'm eating this sandwich right now. Yes, I'm having Shabbos Suda right now. Rabbi Shalom is giving me the strength within this food. Rabbi Shalom put the energy in this food. Thank you, Hashem, that you made such a thing that hunger can be quelled. Is that the word? Right? Thank you, Rabbi Shalom, that you've given me parnasa. Yes, I'm breathing right now. Right? I'm breathing. Rabbi Shalom, thank you. Right? I'm using my soul right now. I'm using my energy. I'm using to praise God, to connect to God, to turn towards God. That's the basic theme. Everything that we do in this world of focusing on spiritual means I'm turning towards God. I'm thinking about God. I'm focusing towards God. I'm connecting myself to God. That's what we're here for. Nikudah, that period. That's the whole story. When you do that, so you're still involved in the physical world. When he says to weaken the power of the darkness that's in the physicality, he doesn't mean to cut off from physicality. He means to weaken the darkness that's in physicality, i.e., physicality for physicality's sake. If I'm turning to, right, here's my sandwich, right? No bracha, no netilas yadayim, no thought about anything, right? So it's physical. It's totally physical. It's coarse. It's dark. But with the bracha, with netilas yadayim, with consciousness, with, right? So I weaken the darkness that's in that physicality, and now I've redeemed it, so to speak. I've turned it into spirituality. And to a point where the body is totally has no darkness of physicality anymore. And then he, meaning his soul, together with his body, can be elevated to the exalted light of Hashem. Tachat masha itahi mitchashechet v'nishpelet imo b'tchila, as opposed to what it was before, where the soul is kind of getting dragged down with the body, losing its light even more, and becoming degraded by the body, by just physicality. The person is in a state, and as long as we're in this physical world, physicality is strong. It's a strong force in his life, always. And since that physicality, like we said, has darkness and filth in it, so to speak, as something that's not good, person, it comes out that a person is in a dark place in this world to some degree, right? He's under the gun, right? He's in the hot seat in this world. It's not easy. He's not in the best conditions, so to speak, for his soul. And therefore, you can understand why a person would want to thrust off physicality or the body, right? Because it's a nuisance. It's bothersome. Have you guys ever been in a situation where it's like, this is like the exact opposite place that I would like to be? You know that feeling? Like this is the exact opposite of what I wanted. It couldn't get worse.
What's opposite?
Huh?
What is opposite? Opposite. What is
No,
opposite?
anytime, like I was hoping to go to the beach on a sunny day, and it ended up like in the city on a rainy day. I don't know, stop. Just like the exact opposite of I wanted to go to hear some soft music, and I ended up at a very loud rock concert. I don't know, whatever. The mashal is not important. That feeling is what I'm trying to say. All right, that's what the soul feels like. This is what I'm contending with. It's like the exact opposite of what I'm trying to do. The physicality, as it is, it's in its state. So it has to take a deep breath and learn how to involve itself in the physicality, not to run away, right? And not to just give in, but to elevate the physicality with it. That's the work. Liyod mitabek bo yidbach shemo, in order that the soul will attach itself, connect to Hashem. Ve'omnam bazeh tzarich sheyasim hishtaluto, and that's what a person's efforts should be in this world. Your efforts are how to connect to Hashem. And there's many tzaddikim that said that, therefore, we should train ourselves to think before all things that we do. Is this going to bring me close to Hashem or not? That's the question, and that should be the determinant of all of our actions and all of our endeavors, right? And it's not so cut and dry that if it's not written in the Shulchan Aruch, so then it's not bringing me close to God. No, there's many nuances of how to do that, right? Shalom. Right? But that's the focus. L'chazek et nishmato, to strengthen my soul, neged koach chomno, right? Against that force of physicality, which is so sticks out so much, is so apparent. Uleitiv et matzavo, and this betters my situation. This elevates me. Lahalot atzmo ilui ad shiur, and elevate. That's called elevating. That's how we better ourselves in this world. So, if Hashem, and you guys forgive me for beating a dead horse here, but just to sum it up, if Hashem created it that we have a body and a soul, the body's supposed to shine to the soul, and the soul's supposed to shine to the body, and the body receives that light from the soul, and then they work together harmoniously to reveal Hashem in this world, to be attached in this physical world to Hashem. But now, because of the sin of Adam Rishon, the physicality is just too coarse, and it can't happen in this way, and it's overpowering. It's so much more overpowering, right? That now our focus has to be dafka strictly on spirituality, in order that our physical endeavors shouldn't overtake us. Eating can overtake you. Being married can overtake you. Everything, walking down the street can overtake you. The senses are so overpowering, and the coarseness of the quality of physicality as it is now is so intense that our focus has to be so much more on spirituality. So sometimes people ask. That's a summary. A lot of times people are disappointed in that in the religious world there's this focus just on spirituality, and there's no consciousness of physical health or wellness. For instance, you go to some type of religious setting in the kiddush, and what are you eating at the kiddush? You're not going to find quinoa and sprouts at a kiddush on Shabbos. You're going to find greasy kugel. You're going to find Coca-Cola. You're going to find schnapps, right? So people say, like, where's the where's the focus on sanctifying physicality as opposed to just right? So, and exercise, for instance, Rav Kook, guys, Rav Kook was the first one that I know of, the only one really, to speak about exercise. First rabbi to speak about exercise, and he said it's holy. He called it in the very beginning. You guys remember this from Orot Tshuva Gufanit, physical tshuva. You have a question?
Didn't Rambam talk about exercise?
Rambam talks about how important health is. I don't know if he speaks specifically about. Maybe I'm forgetting right now. But he speaks about exercise, but he says Rambam says a general statement. What I remember is that part of serving God is being healthy, right? And the Baal Shem Tov said that when the body, a person should be very careful about his health, because when his body is weakened, so his soul also becomes weakened by that, right? But came Rav Kook, one second, Rav Kook said, like, to actually exercise and to restore health to your body, that's tshuva. You're doing service of God, and that was a big chiddush from this hand.
When we say exercise, just normal exercise, not including like sports or something.
No, Rav Kook didn't specify, right? But meaning like anything that's strengthening your body for health purposes. That's the idea.
But is it like a little bit problematic when it comes to, like, let's say, fighting? Like you make yourself strong, and then at the same time you damaging the other person.
Right. So it depends. It depends. It's a good question halachically, if you're allowed to spar, if there's a chance that you're going to cause an injury to another Jew. It's a good question. I don't know how simple that is. And then on a spiritual level, it's a question if what kind of sport activities, what does it bring up in a person? If it's increasing my midot of aggression and of other types of things that might not be so good for a servant of Hashem, so maybe it's not the best, right? One of the things that it says that in I think in probably all sports, there's an element of competition, right? Are there any sports that there is no competition? Putt, golf. I don't know if that's a sport, and there is a competition.
Even in spirituality.
All sports are extremely competitive, some more than others. If you grew up in the Western world, I mean, I don't know if it's just in the Western world, but in the Western world where sports are just, Torah shebichtav, and it's the written Torah, So it's like, it's so deeply embedded in the culture of competition. But one of the things that we have in tradition is that when Rambam, when Mashiach comes, I don't know how I got Rambam from Mashiach. Maybe there's a connection. Right? When Mashiach comes, there will be no competition. One of the things he's going to root out of the world is competition, which comes to teach you what is competition, good or bad.
Even the spirituality.
Competition is a very, very painful thing. Competition causes a tremendous amount of destruction in the world. But if we're going to go to the other extreme, to communism, so we're going to end up in a different mess.
Doesn't the Midrash, right, quote Kohelet, that there's like nothing has motivated man more than competition against his neighbor?
All right, there's yes competition and yes competition. What exactly it will be left, if any of that, when Mashiach comes? I don't know. But the fact that they said that there will be no competition, it's coming to say that there's going to be a huge relief, that you no longer have to compete.
It is what we say, kinat sofri.
Kinat sofrim. There's a holy type of competition, right?
Holy.
And there's also the sources in the Gemara that talk about even in the world to come, different types of things. So we don't know exactly, but anyway, that was all just a parenthetical discussion about sports. But the back to the question, they say why in Orthodox Judaism is there not a focus also on healthy physicality, right? And I think the reason is exactly what we're talking about today, is because since we're so accustomed to and trained to focus strictly on spirituality over the generations, and we didn't have Eretz Yisrael, and there's such a overwhelming force of physicality chasing us all the time, that if we would allow ourselves, if we would have allowed ourselves to focus on that, so it would be lost entirely, right? Since the spirituality, if you don't focus intensely on that, so it'll get swallowed up by the physicality. So a lot of that has been lost, but a lot of that is also coming back today, in our generation. Rav Kook explains, because we've come back to Eretz Yisrael, that our relationship with physicality has changed a lot, and will continue to change, right? But also because of all those generations of that intense spiritual focus, right? So that gives us, it's on their shoulders that we're standing, that gives us the ability, and will give us the ability to have a healthy relationship with the physicality. And again, it depends on what your intention is. When you go to the gym to work out and you're looking at your muscles, right? Are you looking at your muscles and thinking, look how good I look, and is it a physical thing? Or are you going to the gym, like there's a rabbi I know in England, he says, before he walks into the gym, he says, L'shem yichud kucha b'lichud shchinte. I'm doing this for Hashem Yisbach, right? If you could be perfectly healthy without exercising, right, and you still go to exercise, meaning you can't be fully healthy without exercising in this world, right? Pretty much everybody agrees with that. Let's just assume, right? But if it could be that you'd be perfectly healthy, exercise is totally extraneous, so there'd be no purpose in exercising. The only reason why we should exercise is because it helps us be healthy, right? So, but why am I doing it? Why am I doing it? What's my intention? Right? It's the same act. You could be next to the guy in the gym and he's doing it just to get muscles, and you're doing it because you just want to be close to Hashem Yisbach. Right? It's a totally different thing. Okay, gentlemen, I think we'll stop here for the day.